Good day. We are discussing conflict and communication in the healthcare setting. This entire lecture is based on a fantastic textbook I found on the internet, Health Communication Strategies for Health Professionals. It's written by a husband and wife team. She is a college professor of nursing and he is a college professor of communications. So together they really combined their knowledge and experience and created a fantastic textbook on health communication. Conflict both creates the need for change and occurs as the result of change. And the bottom line is that conflict is inevitable within any human organization. There is a tendency to avoid conflict and eliminate change. Conflict is uncomfortable and costly in many, many ways, and we would like to just not change anything and not have any conflict and all get along. But that's really not a very realistic view of life. There's always going to be conflict because people inherently think and view life differently, and there's always going to be change, especially from the outside, regulatory agencies, corporate level changes that we have no control over. So really a more healthy and realistic view is to learn how to manage conflict effectively, since again it will always be a part of our life, and learn to produce positive changes in the midst of outside influences, because again, change is going to be a constant part of our life. Nothing stays the same. Communication is a process of sharing information using a common set of rules. That's a very seemingly simplistic definition, but let's pick it apart a little bit, and you can see it is richer than it seemingly appears. Sharing information is the key to this definition. If I have a piece of information and I don't share it with you, then there's going to be a conflict there, because you won't have what you need to perform your job or move through life, because I have withheld something from you. There can be a problem with the process of that sharing of information. I can have information, I can share it with you, but I don't do it in a way that you understand or perceive, and so you still don't get that communication of shared information, because the process is flawed in your eyes. Some way you don't perceive it as being shared. Using a common set of rules is another key. If we don't agree with a common way of doing things, then that can be fraught with opportunity for conflict. If I don't abide by the rules, that I don't yell at people, and in sharing that information with you, I yell at you, then that is not going to be perceived common set of rules, and so I'm going to get offended or have conflict over that process of sharing information. Human communication refers to interactions between people, and again, that key word is interaction. Anytime two people interact, there is an opportunity for miscommunication and thus conflict. Nordhaus and Nordhaus define health communication as any type of communication whose content is concerned with health. And we all know there are multiple ways to communicate, the most common being verbal and nonverbal. We all know from conflict and communication studies in the past, especially in professional role transformation and the Kearney Nunnery book, who had an excellent chapter on communication, that I don't have to say anything with my mouth to say volumes, to communicate. I can communicate very clearly what I'm thinking with a look, a roll of the eyes, a smirk of the mouth, an expression of the face, and I don't have to say a word. So verbal and nonverbal communication can be a huge opportunity for conflict and miscommunication. Other types can be oral or written, personal or impersonal, and issue-oriented. I have a problem with the core issue, not with you personally, or relationship-oriented. I don't have a problem with the issue, but I have a problem with you. So you can see that there are many levels that are fraught with opportunity for miscommunication in a healthcare setting. Within the extremely large base of communication as a science, and some people get their bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in communication, so it's a very complex field, there is a narrowing of more specific human communication and even a further narrowing and more specified area of health communication within the very broad category of human or communication in general. Conflict can be a struggle between a variety of levels, and again, there's a visual here of a struggle, a tug of war. I'm pulling my way, you're pulling your way, we are fighting over this thing here, and we're both pulling in different directions. It only takes two people to have a struggle, two people to have a tug of war, and so really it doesn't have to be a big group, but just one or two groups of people, two individuals that can have a conflict and create a very costly situation. We all know groups of people that have conflicts. In the healthcare setting, it could be one unit who conflicts with another unit or department. We all know organizations that have struggle or conflicts. Certainly the ANA, American Nurses Association, and the AMA, American Medical Association, have had a conflict or a struggle for decades over the role of nurse practitioners and their rights and prescriptive responsibilities, and there are some states that are still limiting that practice, Florida being one of them. We all have to just pick up the newspaper or turn on the radio or the news to listen to conflict among cultures and nations. We all know that conflict, whether it be a whole nation or just two people, can be a very costly venture, and we're going to get at assessing the cost of a conflict in your case studies, but it's not just an economic cost, it's an emotional cost, sometimes a physical cost of life, and it can be a cost in productivity. So conflict is something that really needs to be proactively addressed. Hocker and Wilmot in 1995 really view conflict from a communications perspective, and I'm going to discuss this definition in detail. An expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from others. So let's pick this apart. Again, we have this visual of an expressed struggle. I'm pulling my way and you're pulling your way, and we're struggling with an issue with at least two interdependent parties. The key here is interdependence. If we were totally independent, if you did your thing and I did my thing and we didn't interact with each other in any way, shape, or form, we didn't impact each other, we didn't depend on each other, then hey, you go do your thing, I do my thing, and never the twain shall meet. But when parties are interdependent, then they are impacting each other, and there becomes the potential for conflict. those two parties perceive incompatible goals. Hey, I want to go east, you want to go west. There are scarce resources. There's not enough around, so hey, I'm going to grab mine and leave you out in the cold, but I'm not going to do without. So I'm going to grab it and the heck with you. And interference from others in achieving those goals. Hey, I want something, you're blocking my way. Move out of the way, go away. I'm got my eye on the goal and you're blocking my path here. So that's kind of the components of a conflict from a communications perspective. Again, this is a schematic of the same components. You can see how they all pull in different directions. Again, there's a struggle, opposing forces. Interdependence is a key issue. There's an affective component, an arousal of feelings. Hey, you're stepping on my toes, you're pushing my buttons. Without that, hey, I don't care what you do. If there's no affective component, if it doesn't arouse a strong feeling in me, then, you know, hey, you want to go do something different, go, good for you. So again, the last component is differences that are perceived to be incompatible. Hey, we can't work this thing out, we're going to struggle over it. There can be conflict over content issues or relationship issues. Content issues can be regarding beliefs and values or regarding goals. Probably the most common experience that healthcare professionals, particularly nurses, have over values and beliefs is the Jehovah's Witness view of blood administration, literally butting heads with the nurses' values and beliefs about blood administration. And you can see this as an opportunity for incompatible goals and opposing forces with very strong affective components on either side. Goals can be procedural. I agree with your goal, but I don't agree with the procedure or the way we're going about reaching that goal, and so there's a conflict there. Or I can have a conflict over the substance of the conflict. I disagree with your particular goal. I think we ought to be going for goal A rather than goal B, and so we're having a conflict over the substance of the goal. There can be a relationship issue, issues of esteem, control, or affiliation. So we all have to just think back to Maslow and that basic hierarchy of needs to know that self-esteem is a human need. So if we have a need for self-esteem or esteem from others that's not being fulfilled, we don't basically feel respected, valued, useful, or significant, there's going to be a problem that has to do with more a human-to-human relationship than a specific content issue. There can be issues of control, and that can be actual control or perceived control. Most of us like to be in control. Self-efficacy is a very viable component in human needs, and so if we have blocked control over something, or we perceived we have blocked control, then there's going to be a potential for conflict. And issues of affiliation need to be included, liked, or received affection. If we feel slighted in any way, again, you can see how that can feed into a relationship-oriented issue of conflict. Conflict is well established in the literature. There have been decades of plays, movies, and songs related to conflict. This is just one example. For those of you who are not familiar with West Side Story, it's basically a modern day Romeo and Juliet. Kind of a tug of war between the Capulets and the Montagues, who have had generations of conflict. and going all the way back to Shakespeare's day. That was a theme that was common and is certainly common again today. In West Side Story, a beautiful Latino girl falls in love with a non-Latino man with disastrous ending, very similar to Romeo and Juliet. And so that's just a simple example of how conflict is played out in common literature and the arts. Conflict resolution theory was really identified and developed by Filley in 1975, and he had very clear kind of steps, if you will, to the whole theory of conflict resolution, and we will go through these one by one. When I speak of antecedents and the condition of antecedents, I'm talking about the setting the stage, the things that occur prior or before the conflict that kind of create a climate that is potential explosive for conflict. So let's take these one by one. Ambiguous roles and responsibilities can be an opportunity for miscommunication and conflict. And again, we're looking at conflict from a communications point of view. I think I know what I'm doing or what I'm responsible for, my role here, so I go ahead and do it, but oops, I find out that maybe I wasn't supposed to do that. So there is a conflict there that can arise from the ambiguous nature of roles and responsibilities. In this Olympic season, there we are definitely attuned to competition for resources. Hey, there's one gold medal and I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get that gold medal and leave you with the bronze or the silver. So competition can be very much, especially if resources are limited, an opportunity for conflict. Barriers to communication, again, if I don't perceive that I'm getting information, or the climate is not such that kind of the unit climate or the organizational climate isn't such that there can be a free exchange of information and ideas, that people feel sort of stuffed into doing something and can't express their viewpoints, then that can be an opportunity for conflict. Forced dependence on others is another particular area. If I'm forced to be dependent on you and I don't particularly like you or get along with you, in that relationship-oriented area of conflict, then that can be a problem. There's a high degree of differentiation, especially with organizations that have multiple levels, and one bottom rung level doesn't feel appreciated or valued by the top rung level, then that can be an opportunity for conflict. If you have ever sat on a committee and you are familiar with joint decision making, you know that getting a committee to agree on something can often be an antecedent for conflict. If you've got 5 or 6 people around a table and all need to agree on something, that can be a problem. If there are many rules, procedures, and policies, and again, it kind of goes back to that ambiguous responsibilities, then, maybe some people think they're following the rules, but the rules have been updated and no one's communicated that update, and there are too many ways of doing things, then that can be a potential for conflict. A definite last antecedent that has to do with that hot button kind of you're pushing my button, stepping on my toes kind of thing is if there have been prior conflicts that have not been resolved. And again, this goes back to that relationship-oriented area of conflict potential. I have a history with you. You always step on my toes. Hey, I'm going to be very wary of you. And so you don't have to say much for me to kind of get offended or get my rattle my chain because I'm already on guard with this particular person. So unresolved prior conflicts is definitely something that is an antecedent for additional conflict. Perceived and felt conflict. Perceived conflict refers to viewing a problem differently. Different perceptions from opposing parties are miles apart. Kind of goes back to the Jehovah's Witness nurse blood administration kind of viewpoint. The next slide is something that many of you have seen, and people often asked, what do you see, an old woman or a young girl? And we'll look at that in a minute. Felt conflict, it can be just as powerful, and this refers to the level of emotional involvement in a problem situation. So what do you feel? Do you have some goal that you're particularly passionate about and that goal is being blocked? You have a very heightened awareness of this. You're very emotionally invested in achieving this goal. You will be much more at odds with someone than if you really don't care less if this problem is solved in one way or the other. This is the slide that I was referring to, the old woman and the young girl. So two people could argue all day long. Here I see a beautiful young girl with a very lovely hat and a pretty hairdo and a beautiful feather. And hey, I see an old woman with a big nose and a big pointed hairy chin. And how do you on earth see this young woman with her head turned in a very coquettish manner? Manifest behavior can refer to the actions and behavior of individuals in response to conflicts. We've talked about antecedents, now we're talking about the thick of the conflict. So there's conflictive behaviors, kind of a negative viewpoint. There's a conscious attempt of one person to compete, dominate, or win over another person. So there's an intentional negative conflicting behavior here. The flip of the coin would be more positive, and there is a problem-solving behavior. Hey, I don't agree with you, but there's a conscious attempt on both parties to find a mutually acceptable alternative. So you can see that the antecedents can be identical, you get in the thick of conflict, but depending on whether your actions and your behaviors are more conflictive or more problem-solving, the conflict can either be diffused or heightened. There are a couple approaches to conflict resolution: win-lose, lose-lose, and win-win. In a win-lose dichotomy, there is definitely a competitive nature to the culture and the society. And again, in an Olympic year, we enjoy watching that competition. That competition is in a controlled set of views. No one's killing each other. And so it's a healthy kind of form of competition. But not all competition can be healthy or safe or productive. In this win-lose scenario, parties are seen as adversaries. They define the problem individually rather than mutually. It's not our together problem to solve, it's, hey, my problem to dominate over you. Parties emphasize the problem rather than the long-term nature. I have no particular interest in a long-term relationship with you. I just want to solve this particular problem. Again, a classic example is a sports type of thing. I've used the Georgia-Florida example. I'm a University of Florida alum, so naturally I made the Gator a little bigger than the Georgia Bulldog. You might do the opposite if you were a Georgia alum. So again, this is an example of a win-lose scenario. In a lose-lose scenario, this is very much a default kind of situation, and it results when other strategies fail. We are at an impasse, we both lose, we can't get anywhere, neither party's goals are achieved, and the relationship is weakened. In a win-win, and again this is a very much a Stephen Covey 7 Habits theme, and I hope as an aside that you explore some of the Stephen Covey content on PAL if you're not familiar with that very powerful approach to human interaction. In a win-win scenario, both parties obtain all or some of their goals. This requires effective communication, not only speaking but listening, and being attuned to creative solutions. This type of conflict resolution or suppression requires an inordinate amount of time and energy, so it requires a lot of effort on the front end, but the outcome is that relationships are strengthened and both parties walk away feeling like they had a piece of the action. The resolution aftermath is again another piece of Filley's conflict resolution theory. Feelings related directly to the outcome of the resolution process. If there is a win-lose or lose-lose scenario, then somebody's going to walk away feeling negatively. Someone's going to walk away being disappointed, and they are going to be less cooperative, more mistrustful, and more prone to future conflicts. In a win-win scenario, there's a strong commitment to the agreed upon solution because, hey, we came together, we talked about this, I had a little piece of this, you had a little piece about this, so there's a buy-in on both sides and good relationships are maintained. Again, any of these approaches that Filley discussed can be utilized in your conflict resolution case study. There are a variety of styles to approaching conflict. Successful conflict resolution occurs when individuals select the conflict style that most appropriately meets the demands of the situation. And we're going to talk about these 5 resolution styles that both have their inherent pros and cons. They're avoidance, competition, accommodation, compromise, and collaboration. So let's talk about avoidance. Avoidance is a very passive style. Hey, I prefer to just ignore rather than confront your conflict. It's not very assertive about my own interests and not cooperative in assisting others to solve the problem. But avoidance can be useful with a very trivial item. Maybe I rise above a certain situation. I overlook a slight because in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that important. Or conversely, if I make an issue of it, then it can really blow up and be very costly in creating a lot of damage. So I choose to avoid going there. This particular style involves suppressing your own concerns and conflicts to perform necessary services. So maybe in a patient-nurse scenario, the patient is rather rude or disagreeable to the nurse, and the nurse chooses to avoid making an issue of it because the potential damage could be rather costly. In a competition style of resolution, this is very highly assertive, so the exact opposite of the avoidance. I'm very assertive in speaking up about what I want and my own goals, and I'm really not that interested in helping others achieve their goals. I'm very uncooperative in that department. This can produce short-term productive results, but it can draw or direct energy away from creating a good interpersonal working relationship And this kind of resolution style in a co-worker environment cannot be very productive in a long term. It can also cause a duplication of services. Hey, I get very competitive, I'm going to go here and do my thing. You get equally competitive and you go here and do your thing. And so maybe two shifts on a particular unit create a certain teaching tool rather than coming together and creating a common teaching tool that both shifts can utilize. This particular style fails to recognize the needs and concerns of others. In an accommodation resolution style, this is a very unassertive style, but cooperative and other-oriented. I confront a problem, but I defer to others. There's a close attention to the needs of others, whereas an ignoring of your own needs. So essentially your own values or goals are sacrificed to maintain smooth relationships with others. This rather submissive style allows others to take charge. And again, this can be a style that can be consciously chosen to preserve harmony if necessary. So say for instance, there is a kind of a squabble over the Christmas holiday. I have seniority and it is my holiday to take, but there is another nurse on the unit with young children. I don't have young children, and so I accommodate. I'm other-oriented, and for the sake of harmony, I defer my needs and work the holiday and give the holiday to this young mother with children, young children at home, to have the Christmas holiday with her children. So I'm sacrificing my own values and needs and being other-oriented. Compromise is a halfway between competition and accommodation, and halfway between avoidance and collaboration. So in that prior scenario, maybe I would compromise with this young mother. Hey, you know, I will work your Christmas, even though I really want it off, but you work my New Year's because you have young children and you can stay home where I can go out and party with my friends on New Year's, and I don't really care about working Christmas because I don't have little children for Christmas Day. So that could be a compromise type of resolution style. Again, problem with compromise is one of degree. Both parties need to give in a little bit, but pull back from their own needs. And both parties express personal thoughts to reach a solution that's not totally satisfactory, but each of us get a little piece of what we want. Sometimes this kind of compromise style is needed for harmony, and the goal of harmony supersedes the need for optimal solutions. So again, it's kind of a choice that someone makes that, gee, this would be the most ideal. I deserve to have both Christmas and New Year's off, but I am not going to choose to do that because my need for harmony is higher than my need for optimal solutions. There is a resolution style of collaboration. It is the most preferred style, but the hardest to achieve because it involves energy and lots of hard work. And this hard work and energy go into exploring differences, identifying areas of agreement, selecting mutual and satisfying solutions, and extending that conversation to search for new alternatives to existing problems. That essentially, hey, let's sit down, let's talk, and let's think outside the box. This style of resolution requires shared control. It is definitely a win-win kind of resolution style. Both parties are satisfied, relationships are strengthened, and in the long term, usually these negotiated solutions are more cost effective. There are advantages and disadvantages to each style. We've discussed those. One's very quick and easy. Hey, I just avoid or overlook, but that is costly long term to me personally. The collaboration end of the spectrum is definitely more time consuming and more energy consuming, but potentially more long-term productive. The most effective style both meets the needs of the participants and fits the demands of the situation. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It really needs to take into account both the demands and the needs of the participants. There's a pivotal element, and that is definitely effective communication, which can prevent differences from escalating and facilitating constructive solutions. I hope this lecture on conflict and communication in the healthcare setting has been helpful to you. I hope you use some of these components in your case studies on conflict resolution,